I think people outside think we're slightly mad, and I get it. It is very different, and it's not without its challenges, but you're in it together. And if someone isn't, it's so obvious. So I think that's the key. But I do also totally respect that it's very different than most organisations.
Hi, I'm Belden Menkus. Welcome to the Purposeful Strategist, the podcast that shifts the conversation about purpose and strategy from what organizations should do to what business leaders are doing and what they've learned along the way. My guest today is Sara Bailey, senior partner at Trowers Hamlins, an international law firm with over 170 partners and more than 1,000 people located across the UK, Middle East, and Asia. The firm's origins date back to 1777. Sara was originally on the podcast in November 2023 when she described an ambitious and broad set of changes that the firm was undertaking to achieve its responsible business agenda. I thought it'd be a good time to check in and see how they're progressing. Sara, welcome back to the Purposeful Strategist podcast.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be back.
Great. In the course of our conversation today, I hope to pick up on a number of themes from the last one and sort of see how they're evolved, maybe even probe into a number of new things.
Sure.
Maybe we can just kind of start with the responsible business agenda. You know, you laid out a pretty ambitious set of plans, including ISO 14001 certification, supply chain emissions, doing something about business travel, really quite ambitious. Just interested to hear how that's going.
I think I would say it's slow.
It always is.
Yeah, because it's a lot of change. We brought in a guy called Lee Collier, who is our head of sustainability, and he has really helped us understand what we need to do and actually what is a little bit of a red herring. So business travel, for example, because we are not global, we're international but not global, actually our business travel is not as big an issue as you may think. So in reality, while absolutely we're controlling it and making sure that we're doing it in the right way, it's not as big an issue as perhaps some of the building issues that we have. So we've been looking at all the time. It's a live strategy. It's a live document looking at where we need to move to, what we need to look at. And he's very, very good at keeping us on the straight and narrow and actually taking us down the right paths. The supply chain has started. Our clients and the investors of our clients more and more wanting to make sure that we are looking and going down that trajectory. So that's really, really interesting. And I think the other thing that has been interesting across the piece about the responsible business strategy is ensuring that people realise we're still a business. So it's absolutely fundamental to us that our ED&I strategy is transparent. It's there. We're following it. Same with our sustainability strategy. That does not mean that we're not here as a business. And therefore, making sure that it's done alongside your day job. People don't think it's either becoming just the day job or actually going, well, I haven't got time for that because it's not my day job. It is, including running the business.
Yeah. Very much linked with that, or at least in my mind linked with it, you launched a new practice dedicated to energy and sustainability. And if I understand it right, it's to advise clients not just on legal issues, but around all the aspects of the energy transition from decarbonization, renewals, etc. Going beyond the sort of normal scope of a law firm feels like a risk. So how did you weigh all that up? Do I even have it right?
We're not going into the realms of architects or engineers or sustainability consultants who are looking at data in a different way. What we are doing, though, is saying it's holistic. It's not just about giving you a legal strategy which bears no resemblance to what your commercial strategy needs to be. We need to look at this as a holistic piece. So that could mean suggesting that we bring other people in order to make sure that the advice they've got is the rounded advice. It's not just the legal bit.
Somewhat kind of linked to that, I guess, growing the firm and being more profitable, clearly on your mind in 2023. I suspect on your mind now, and if we chatted again in a couple of years, I suspect it would be on your mind then.
Yep.
But how's that been going, and sort of what are your objectives for 2025?
So we've launched our strategy for 2030, and we're very clear what that means in terms of turnover, 230 million. It does actually have maths behind it, so it works quite well. We know the areas that we want to get our growth from. So not just our existing areas, but building on other practices that we've been developing, such as cross-border disputes. We've moved that up a league with our new recruits, which is fantastic. Energy is a big part of that piece. And what we've been doing is sort of, I suppose, educating our staff more about what it means to actually give good legal advice, but at the same time run a good business. So it's around actually understanding what makes up the fee. It sounds really simple, but lawyers are dreadful about fee cuts. Everyone thinks lawyers are out there to fleece, and in fact, lawyers will double discount because they hate asking for money. And we can only be a responsible business. We can only pay for all the stuff we want to pay for in terms of sustainability, in terms of ED&I, in terms of social value, if we actually bring the money in through the door. So I don't know if it's the right term, because I'm sure there is some true definition around this, which I don't know. But I always think about it's that empathetic leadership. My job is to lead the firm in a way that is empathetic to what the firm is, to people. People are my business. That is what makes our business up. And at the same time, reminding people we are a business, So it's making sure that we keep the balance right so that we have a business that we can be responsible for, I think is a key.
And are there any specific sort of tools or training or whatever you've been using around that?
Yeah, we brought in consultants who sort of gone in, looked at not just the finance sort of systems, but actually looked at how we can simplify things so that each departmental head can genuinely look at how they're running their own part of the business to make sure that they're actually delivering what they need to deliver, but in an educated way, so that it's not just looking at numbers, it's actually looking at people as well and what growth means. And true growth, obviously, is not about cutting, it's about growing. You can see there are some organisations which will say they've grown by 20%, so their top line looks like it's grown, but they haven't really grown. And I think that's dangerous. I think you've got to have real growth, and that's what we're trying to achieve by training, by having a proper strategy, which is out there. The whole firm knows about it. We're very transparent about that. And understanding underneath all of this, underpinning all of this, is people. And if you lose your people, then you've lost your business. That is from every walk of life of the firm, you might say. It's as important to me that our guys in our post room understand what the strategy is. It's just as important as our senior equity partners understand it, because everyone's part of this business. And I do think that's really important. I think to be a truly responsible business, you need to make sure that you understand your people and what they want.
I know when we talked last time, you discussed how you had used a very inclusive approach to kind of identify some values. As you're going through this development of your strategy and then communicating it, how have you actually gone about that?
So the actual strategy started with a facilitator session with both the strategic board and the wider management team. Then that went out to the equity. We then went to a partners conference where we launched it all. We had lots of different sessions on different parts of it, and we talked it all through. And then what we did was we distilled it down really to a one-pager. And each year we will set out what our objectives are for that year. And each year I report to the firm, and not just over Zoom or Teams, but I go around every office and I talk not just to the partners. So the partners have their own session, but then I have separate sessions for the fee earners and for the business support, so that they feel that they can ask questions and they can raise points they might not feel that they wish to raise necessarily in a bigger forum. And my commitment to everybody has been, I will be very transparent with you. We'll show you where we are, why we've set out where we are, and I'll also show you where we've got to. And if we haven't got to where we said we're going to, why we haven't and what we're doing about it. And then identify what our next 12 months strategy is as well, which is we're working on at the minute. The way our growth strategies work is we've got the 2030 overarching strategy, but then it will be broken down into year by year where we want to be, what we want to achieve, and how we develop as a business. Not just on the finances, also on the people front and the client front.
So when you say broken down year by year, is it sort of every year you kind of carve another year off of the 5, or you've actually already got 5 years laid out?
Well, we've got our 5-year mapped out financially, but each year under each of our strands, which incorporates our values, one of the ones, for example, is we want to be an employer of choice. We believe that that's really fundamental to be an employer of choice. We say how we're going to measure that. So that's through exit interviews. There's lots of different tools that we use. We use surveys, etc., to measure that. But then, well, underneath that, how do we make sure we're an employer of choice? Well, then each year there will be new initiatives in place to make sure that we are on track and we're continuing to test ourselves to make sure that we are there. The same in terms of clients, I suppose. It's as a firm, we have decided we want to identify 3 areas which we're not in the top tier for, that we think we should be in the top tier for. And then we will have the 5-year strategy to get to that point. And each year that will work through. So what we're trying to do, I suppose, is distill it into easy chunks that people can go, oh, I know what we're doing this year. I've got to focus on that. That's what we're doing. Or that's what the firm's focusing on. That's where they're going. So that it becomes achievable and it becomes measurable.
Is that an approach you've been using, or did you adopt that newly for this 2030 strategy?
It's new. Yeah, we've adopted it for this strategy. I think part of that is through the values, people feeling that they do feel part of the firm. They do want to be human. They do want to bring the innovation in its broadest sense to the party. And actually, the whole dialogue that we're having with the business is all around that, is making sure that people do genuinely feel that they're part of this strategy and they're coming along with us. Whether we've got that right, I don't know yet. We'll see.
It's always the frustrating thing. You won't really know for a while yet.
Yeah.
If we could zoom back a little bit further and sort of really look at the big picture, if you had, I'll use the word ambition. What do you want the firm to become? What impact do you want it to have on the world? What's the really big, why are we doing this?
As you said at the very beginning, Trowers has been around for a very, 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 very long time. We are fiercely protective of our independence, I think it's fair to say. So if you were to ask me what I want my legacy to be, I want the firm to be in a strong position to have choice, but I want it to have grown and to be financially strong, but absolutely culturally strong. So for me, success will be we've kept our culture, we've kept our people alongside us. Running a business is, as you know, not easy, and you have to make some very tough decisions at times, but it's how you make those decisions that matter. So success for me will be people going, yeah, I know we did that, but do you know what? We did it in the right way. And we're here, and actually, yep, although the culture is very collegiate, I still feel it's open, we can talk. So we haven't become a faceless business. We are still the Trowers that I knew and I know now.
Right. I've got the sense from what we've talked about that social mobility is sort of a personal passion of yours, and you're particularly interested in creating opportunities for young adults who've come out of the child care system. And if I remember right, that you were beginning to think about an initiative to bring together a wider group of businesses and other stakeholders around that issue. I know life's always difficult and things get in the way, but if you've been able to make some progress on that, we'd love to hear how it's been going.
I don't think I've made as much progress as I would have liked. Again, what would success look like to me when I do step away from Trowers would be to genuinely feel that we've made a difference in terms of getting people into law from different backgrounds. I think we have a long way to go on that, if I'm honest. I think as a firm, we're trying to do our bit, but we need to come together as a profession. Have I made any progress on that? No, probably not yet. That's one on my list of things I need to do or need to try and do. I do think there's a lot more initiatives around. We're supporting each other in different initiatives, but we probably haven't really had that forum of like, how do we make serious progress? And I think that's probably the next step.
Do you think there's something sort of in the way of that? And I'll tell you why I'm asking, Sara. There's a lot of difficult issues in the world, and many of them are very difficult, if not impossible, for any single organization to really make much difference on. And it does somehow seem extraordinarily difficult to get groups of people, organizations, even when they share a common purpose. I just wondered if you had any insights on where the difficulty is.
I honestly sometimes think it's as simple as it's the day job that gets in the way. I think over the past few years, the day job in any business, to be honest, has been really difficult, really hard, and it's all consuming. And I think to carve out some space to think about something that isn't directly impacting today on your business can be really challenging. And we all want to do it, and we all, there'll be a forum where we get together and we all go, oh God, yeah, absolutely, we need to do this. But to carve out that time when you've got all these other pressures can be quite challenging. So I think that's part of it. I think in the legal profession, there is still a blocker, that there is still, like it or not, a little bit of a snobbery about where you've been to university and what you've done and all the rest of it. And that's very difficult to get over. But we are making slow progress. I mean, we've got an apprenticeship scheme now. Yes, we were a bit later to the party, deliberately so, because we wanted to see how it panned out and what it really meant. The board agreed to do it on the basis that it was genuinely there to help those people, the young people who couldn't go to university or couldn't go to college because, they might be carers, they might have to care for their family, or they just haven't got the money. It wasn't, how can I put this, well, I mean, too rude, but middle-class parents have saved some money to put their kids through apprenticeships rather than send them to university. So I do think the day job gets in the way. I do think if all of us are being honest, on the list of your critical items you've got in your life at any one point at work, that probably isn't right up there unless you make it up there as a personal passion. So, part of my role, I suppose, is some of these things to drag up to the top of the list and go, no, actually, it is fundamental, it is important.
Yeah. One of the things that strikes me in what you've just said is people often can be critical of leaders, of chief execs, of senior partners, for being short-term oriented. And yet, that sort of time pressure, the time to step back and even think, well, how's this all going to play out in next years? I know it sounds simple, but I suspect it's really a real part of the problem.
I think it is. I mean, something as simple as Fridays, block out for no meetings. That's my thinking time. I'm going to have at least 2 a month. And it's great. And they get blocked out of your diary and you start off and you think, yes, this is good. And then within probably 2 or 3 weeks, it's eaten away because it's like, oh, God, Sarah's got some space in her diary on Friday.
Well, everybody knows.
So it is really hard. Yeah. And I think it is. I think that's why people find strategy hard, because actually, if you're really doing the vision and the strategy piece, you need to take yourself out of it and think in a very different way. You can't be short-termism. You've got to have that longer-term view. It depends on the nature of the firm, and I think probably consultants like the PwCs of this world are much better at this than law firms. But, you lay out a 5 to 10 year strategy for a law firm, you've got to invest to grow. So people do look year on year because that's their profits, that's the business, that's how the press looks at us. So actually, in any of these areas, in itself is a challenge. So time is the most precious commodity we've got, and it's really difficult to find it.
Yeah. The other thing I would point to, and again, it'd be interested to hear if this resonates with you, is I think a lot of organizations over the last 5 years, 10 years, maybe longer, have been really focused on, I'll use the term efficiency, but sort of looking around and going, do we really need to do that? Do we really need to? And in some ways, that's great. If you keep doing that, if you keep sort of cutting costs, pretty soon you don't have the people, they don't have the time to look at new ideas, to try something out that might not work, to do all the things that lead to innovation, to growth, to expansion, to improvement. And I think you can really end up in a very sort of, you're there on the treadmill, just run, and you don't have time to actually make it any better. Just curious if you see that playing out.
I do, and I think the easiest solution on paper to actually look like you've grown is to cut costs. But that is not how you grow. Growth has to be proper growth, and to do that, you give people the headroom to grow. And that can be challenging, it can be challenging. And I think one of the things that I think I fight on a daily basis is to allow partners and allow staff to go, I've got an idea and I really think this could be something. I just want some time. Can I go for it? And, everyone is very good at going, yeah, go for it. And then a week later, go, oh, well, you've got no time on your timesheet, have you? What's going on there?
Where's your numbers?
Exactly. So I think it's following through and actually genuinely giving people the time to try and make something. Not everyone can do it, but the people who can. And backing them to try and do that, I think, is really important. And I think the other thing which I'm finding more and more is we're all different. We're all made up differently. And to get the best out of people, you genuinely do have to understand people. And there might be some people that you're never going to work with, and that's fine. But, we are all different. And in a partnership like a law firm is, you have got to understand what actually works for some people, doesn't work for others. I do worry about people thinking that you can just apply one approach to everybody and everything. So again, it goes back to the empathetic leadership point, is I think leadership and growth and the responsible business is all about understanding the people.
Kind of related to that, let me try an idea out on you. I'll admit it's an idea that's been forming in my head for a little while, and I wouldn't say I've got it all that clear. And it relates to AI, clearly a topic a lot of us are wrestling with. And the thought, which is not really original to me, in essence says there's broadly two things you can do with AI. One thing is you can use it to automate. You can take things that human beings are doing and replace it by a machine doing it, some software, whatever, takes the labor cost out. And that, I think, is where most people who are thinking about AI are kind of seeing it go, particularly corporations, organizations. The other avenue is to say, no, this is about enhancing the skills and capability of individuals so they're more productive. That may not actually reduce costs. It may increase the value to your clients or customers or whatever in such a way that revenue goes up, profits go up, but costs actually still go up. And that probably, I think, is happening on a bottom-up basis. I think individuals are finding AI tools, whatever it happens to be, Copilot, ChatGPT, and beginning to go, oh, I could do this, which I never would have even thought about doing before because it would have taken too long or whatever. They're enhancing their capability. If you have any thoughts, two things. One is, do you think that's a useful way to look at how people are embracing AI and how they're actually using it? And then if it does, where's Trowers on this?
I think I'll answer the second bit first, actually, if that's all right. I think where Trowers is we absolutely embrace AI at the right levels. So like ChatGPT, we're not there yet because it hasn't got the protections that we need, and there's some issues with it from a legal point of view that we need to sort it out. We are of a certain size. There are way bigger organizations that are developing this AI. It's not our business to develop AI. That's just not what we should be doing. It's a distraction that, being blunt, we can't afford. So how does that work for us, and how can we make it work for our people? Absolutely agree with you that a number of that is about efficiencies. I would say it's less about losing people and more about, well, okay, at a certain type of work across all spheres, there is a certain amount that can be automated, and therefore we don't need to keep recruiting in order to do that. At the moment, I think it's fair to say across the legal profession, it can do so much, but there's still the human element that's needed. In terms of enhancing, I think that it probably is right that people individually have looked at how it can enhance. Obviously, we're strongly regulated, so people can't just go off and decide to do something on their own. I think a lot of law firms out there talk a very good talk about AI and a very good game. I've yet found any that really, other than perhaps one or two, that is a big focus for them, that really use it in a way of enhancing. So I think it's all to play for. I do think it's there. I do think it's even little things. We were just joking the other day about how one of my colleagues hadn't realised that you've got on your phone, you've got your emails, there's a little microphone at the bottom, which means you can actually record your email. It sends it live. They hadn't realised that. Now that's AI. It's been there for quite a long time that no didn't realise. And that's like a revelation to them. It's like, oh my God, this is incredible. I do think there's a lot more that can be done, and there's a lot more that will be done, but I don't think it's quite as evolved as people make it out to be.
I think that's probably true. We've talked about values, we've talked about strategy, we've talked about ambition, but we haven't really explicitly talked about purpose. And I just wonder, is there a purpose that you'd say that's the Trowers and Hamlins purpose, or is it sort of subsumed in some of the other things we've talked about?
Definitely do have a purpose, and our purpose, is to provide sort of innovative solutions to our people and clients. I think purpose is a fascinating one because you have to have a purpose, because what makes working at Trowers different from working at one of my competitors? Or why do I work here, not next door at Slaughters and May, and they're a brilliant firm? So we all have our purpose, which is slightly different, but we're all law firms underneath it. So ours is very much people orientated and around innovation and collaboration. So that's our purpose. Our purpose is to innovate and collaborate, but innovate in the widest sense of the word, because again, when we did our purpose, we basically locked the management team in a room and told us we had to brainstorm this. For lawyers, purpose is something that's really nebulous and really hard. We came out with some words. We then went to the board who debated it for 2 or 3 hours. But one of the things that came out of it really strongly was the collaboration piece. Everyone felt that within Trowers, we collaborate not just on work, but we just genuinely do collaborate as a partnership. We collaborate together. We're not in silos. That flows to everything we do. So we must never lose that collaboration point.
And that work that you did, sort of locking people in a room and saying, you've got to come up with something. Where did that happen, sort of time-wise, compared to coming up with your values and coming up with your purpose?
So we did our values first. Do I think that's the right way around? I think it depends on your organisation is the honest answer. So we then brought some people in to help us look at our strategy who said, profit without purpose is pointless. And actually, you won't achieve it. You need to have a purpose because fundamentally as humans, we are about purpose. We're not about profit. That is what we are. And our purpose also came from the fact that we strongly believe in the responsible business agenda. We strongly believe that our culture is different. Our culture is important. We are collaborative. So yeah, that's where it came from. And so we started with our purpose before we went on to our mission and our strategy. Our purpose came first. Did that feel to you like that's sort of the right way? Values, purpose, strategy? Yeah, I think it did. For me, the values was to really understand whether what I thought the business saw was actually what the business saw, and that we then knew what we were living and breathing. And those values are embedded in our board decision making. When we make tough decisions, we come back to our values. It's about how you make those decisions. It's about how you implement those decisions. It doesn't stop you making those decisions. And I think that's the bit that often people got a bit confused about. We haven't got it all right in order. There's lots of things that I think we've probably put the cart before the horse occasionally, but that's fine because you work your way through it. We're a partnership, and that means effectively my business is completely people driven. It's a very different type of business than somebody with widgets. When we spoke last time, you described how the partnership at Trowers works a bit differently from many law firms. And I'll have to confess, I'm not sure I fully understood it then, and I definitely don't fully understand it now. I just wonder if you could walk through kind of how that works and what it means, because I think it leads into some of what you've been talking about. So the difference from most law firms, and certainly I don't think there's anyone like us in the City of London, is that at the very top of our partnership, we are equal sharing, which genuinely means that we take out the same no matter what you earn, no matter what you do. There's no performance-related piece. It is absolute equal sharing at the top. It is equity for life. So once you sign up to that, you're signed up to it. Now, of course, that's contractual, but it does mean that there's a commitment there. And we also have an annuity, which most firms have moved on from. What has that done? That means that we're not dog eat dog. In hard times, if one of our partners is having a tough time, it's our job to support them because we all benefit from supporting them. We have a genuinely collaborative culture that we do pull together and we work through it. And that sort of filters down through the firm. You said it's a partnership for life, but then you also said it's contractual. So just tell me what that means. So we've all signed up to the fact that if you are what we call our senior equity partner, you cannot leave and work anywhere else. You just can't. So you're going to stay there till your career is over? You just stay, yeah. Now, what I mean by that, of course, it's contractual, is if someone was seriously unhappy, as long as my other 34 partners agreed, we could release them from that. That's happened probably once that I know of in the entire history of Trowers. And our challenge is to make sure that that doesn't hold us back. And we've got to keep ourselves updated to make sure that we're not out of date, but keeping that culture, keeping that process. There aren't many institutions, many arrangements in what I'll call Western culture that says, I commit myself wholeheartedly to this person or this group of people, and it's for life, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health. Marriage is sort of one of those, but you can tell I'm kind of getting slightly emotional, but I think there's something really wonderful about that. I'm sure also awful, just like marriage is wonderful and awful in equal measure. I think people outside think we're slightly mad, and I get it. It is very different, and it's not without its challenges, but you're in it together. And if someone isn't, it's so obvious. So I think that's the key. But I do also totally respect that it's very different than most organisations.
that all kind of connects into some of the things you're trying to do about diversity and inclusion. This sort of, because often I'm sure you've heard people say this, oh, we want to hire like-minded people. Like, well, if you're going to have to rub along with them for the next 40 years, there's a temptation, but equally you can see the challenge. That's not going to work long term. We all think the same thing.
What is a Trowers person? I would say somebody who is collegiate, somebody who is genuinely about people, but I can hand on heart say we're all very different. We bring the human element of ourselves to work. So we have very different approaches. It is yin and yang, and that's what brings that diversity of thought piece, which you need. And if everybody was just sitting on the table nodding and being clones, I don't think you've got a good business. You need that diversity of piece. You need that challenge. Even if you fundamentally disagree with each other, it's fine as long as you respect each other. And so that's what I always start the meetings by saying. This is not about people not disagreeing, but it's about respecting other people's views. So you've got to have that level of respect and politeness to it. My view is you always can get something from somebody else's view.
That maybe leads into a question about advice to other business leaders. Last time, I think your advice was listen to lots of different viewpoints, don't assume you know best, and very much echoing something you've been saying here. Have a trusted colleague to challenge you. Is there anything you'd add to that or anything you might change?
I wouldn't change any of that. I think that is all fundamental. I think the only bit I would add is I have found very helpful having somebody that I trust outside of the firm. They've helped me, what I call tune the noise out. Because I think as a leader, you can very easily be overwhelmed with noise, and you've got to learn how to tune out what is noise and what is real. And to learn how to tune that noise out, I think is fundamental. Absolutely, you are not always right, and you've got to listen. But also, if an approach isn't working, instead of blaming the person it's not working with, work out yourself why that approach hasn't worked with them. We all do it probably when we negotiate deals. But if something has worked with one partner, but it's not working with another, then think about it. What is it? That goes back to what I call empathetic leadership. Absolutely leading from the front, but listening and understanding. And we all get it wrong at times. And put your hands up when you get it wrong, because it's amazing how much people respect that when you actually go, do you know what? Sorry. That one's on me. I got that one wrong.
Anything we haven't touched on you'd like listeners to know?
If anyone was looking to come into a role like a CEO or a senior partner, if you want the job, you probably shouldn't have the job, because it's not about your ego. It's actually about everything else. Sometimes the best leaders are the ones who don't think they're brilliant at leading. And I think there's something in that. I think that is very true. I also genuinely think you need to be kind to yourself. If people are doing well, they'll thank everybody. That's fine. The moment something slightly goes wrong, you won't get thanked for it. And do you know what? That's fine. That's part of the job. That's what you do. But be kind to yourself about it, because I think I've seen too many people not be kind to themselves, and that's not been good.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Sara, again, thank you for coming back. Thank you for sharing.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Again, if you don't mind, I might ask you to be back here in the future. That'd be great.
That's fine. It's lovely. It's lovely to be on.
Thanks so much. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Purposeful Strategist. In addition to being available on our website, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, please do follow us and leave us a 5-star review. It helps others find the podcast. Thanks again, and join us soon for the next episode of The Purposeful Strategist.